The following is the harrowing true story of how one fatal decision led to a young tour guide being eaten alive by a hungry brown bear at a national park in Russia. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is the terrifying bear attack on Mikhail Garin. Welcome to Final Affliction. On June 21, 2021, 16-year-old Mikhail Garin was helping travelers explore the Ergaki National Park as a tour guide in the Siberian Mountains of Siberia. The area is a picturesque tourist resort with rocky mountains and high waterfalls. The summer is the only time of the year that the province is easily accessible for tourists to explore. Animals like the snow leopard, moose, wild boar, and wolves are some of the largest populations that inhabit this rough geography. But the most formidable of these predators is the infamous Russian grizzly bear. It is the largest bear species on the continent at over 2.5 meters in length and standing more than 3 meters tall on its hind legs. Armed with a set of 42 teeth, including molars and razor-sharp front canines, it can tear through its victim's flesh and deliver crushing force to the bone in a single bite. Thousands of fatal bear attacks have been recorded in the last few decades, and most of them have resulted from humans venturing too close into bear territory. On that fateful day, early in the morning, young Mikhail was making preparations for visits and exploration trips around the park for the group of travelers that had hired him as a helper and tour guide. He realized he was short on some important supplies for the camp and decided to make a quick trip to a nearby village downhill. It was 7 in the morning, and the sun had barely started to shine through the dense fog and clouds. The path to the village went through a forest cover that remained frozen for most of the year. The young boy picked up his backpack and set afoot downhill to the village, hoping to make it back in time. The cold morning fog had silenced the crunch of the leaves that littered the forest floor. He had seldom been up so early and had just started his new job as a tour guide at the park. Mikhail walked among the tall forest trees, with only the occasional chirping bird that disturbed the dead silence. After just a few minutes of walking, he heard a muffled grunt in the distance that perked up his ears. He was aware of the danger of animal attacks in the area, but had never encountered one. The boy looked back, trying to pierce through the morning fog to see into the distance, but there was nothing there. He quickened his pace and walked straight ahead, and he dismissed anything he heard as the odd deer or elk that would sometimes graze the forest. He then heard the grunt again, this time much closer behind him. It was followed by the sound of footsteps approaching in the distance. The little boy glanced back, and what he saw froze him still in terror. A giant mass of brown fur peeked at him from among the woods. The feared grizzly bear stood less than 10 feet away from the frail young boy, with its eyes locked straight on him. Mikhail stood there, unsure of the next move to make. He had studied wildlife brochures about the area and knew that running was the greatest mistake he could make in that moment. There was no one to call out to for help. It was just the massive bear and the little boy, surrounded by miles of forest on every side. Mikhail's heartbeat raced, as every step back he took was matched by a step forward of the bear. In desperation, he looked up at the trees in hopes of climbing into safety, but the branches provided no support to pull himself up. The bear realized how vulnerable the boy was and lunged straight at him with all its might. Grizzly bears can stand on their 2 hind legs and like to swiftly kill their victims with a massive stomp on the neck to immobilize its prey before feasting on it. The bear leapt at Mikhail from the distance, pinning him beneath its legs. The little boy screamed in pain with the massive weight of the bear atop his fragile body. The predator growled at him and took aim for the neck, plunging its front canines deep into his flesh. Mikhail could offer no resistance and breathed his last in just a few short minutes. The animal dragged him deep into the woods and cut open his torso to devour his insides. Several hours had passed, and the tourists back at the camp were left wondering where the young boy had gone. Despite searching and calling out his name, Mikhail was nowhere to be found. The camp settlement was close to the opening of the forest, and they ventured into it trying to find him. Just a few minutes later, they discovered something that confirmed the brutal tragedy that had taken place. It was the half-eaten corpse of the young boy, identified by his shirt, lying beside the trees in the distance. Horrified at the gruesome nature of his death, they stumbled forward trying to assess what had actually happened. It was only a few moments later that they noticed the grizzly bear among the woods guarding its kill. The tourists now found themselves in the same predicament as the young boy, but didn't know what to do. In desperation, one of the tourists ran back to his camp, prompting the bear to chase after him. But the man was armed with a small pocket knife, which he used to take several jabs at the animal's neck as it leapt onto him. The small knife was no match for the sheer size of the bear and was only enough to momentarily throw it off. The animal walked away and sat down near Mikhail's half-eaten body, giving the tourists just enough time to escape and run back to their camp. The men went and alerted authorities at the Ergaki National Park, detailing the death of their tour guide and the harrowing ordeal they just went through. Several park rangers and sharpshooters spread into the forest in an attempt to locate and tranquilize the man-eating bear. The park was immediately closed, and everyone working was called back to safety. By the time the men made it to the site where they found Mikhail's body, they found the bear still lying beside him on the forest floor. The park rangers, assuming that the bear was dead from the knife wounds, approached the animal to carry it away. But as the rangers went close enough to reach, it got up and lunged at the men. Fortunately, the ranger was armed with a rifle, loaded and aimed at the bear, and fired several shots as it jumped at him. The bear was finally dead, with over 7 bullets to the head and chest. The tourists looked at the body of the young boy, which resembled a mauled carcass, and realized how lucky they were to have escaped the attack with just a few cuts and bruises. The attack was the result of a series of coincidences that ended in the brutal demise of the young boy. The prolonged freezing winters had forced the grizzly bears to descend and populate the forests closer to human settlements in search of food. That eventually led to crossing paths with humans more often, resulting in an erosion of fear and greater proclivity to see humans as prey. Climate change had also been depleting their natural diet and disturbing the natural food chain of their habitat. On that fateful day, the final nail in the coffin for Mikhail was his decision to take a shortcut to the village through the forest instead of the path circumventing the forest carved out by the park authorities. The news spread like wildfire and prompted action to retreat human settlements further away from bear territory in order to avoid another fatal attack. But 16-year-old Mikhail wasn't so lucky, and his half-eaten and almost unrecognizable body was scooped up and buried at a graveyard nearby. His family was left devastated at the loss of their son, who had gone out to earn a livelihood and support them at such a young age, but tragically instead met his untimely final affliction.